Secrets, you say? Well, what kind of
Well,
secrets do you want to know?
well, you have a knack for boiling down some pretty important ideas into very memorable mantra length sentences. And there's one of them that's been stuck in the back of my head for weeks. Whenever I feel like I'm not playing right, I just say to myself, push into cover.
Okay, so pushing into cover basically has two forms to it. There's a push in and a push out of cover. And it's mainly how you're going to move around a map and then engage your opponents. So when you move around a map, generally you don't want to hold sprint and run straight at someone, right? Because you don't necessarily know where they're going to be at. You have to be reading your radar at the same time, as well as checking where they're at. So if you end up in the middle of a lane with no cover around you, you're just going to get shot at, right? So this idea of pushing into cover and pushing out of cover is a way to move around the map safely. So it gives you time to check your surroundings and to check your radar safely, because you're going to be behind a box or, above a lane, things like that. So when you push into cover, it mainly requires you to jump and slide a lot, as well as sprint. But mostly you want to stay off radar and move quickly. And the way maps are set up, you basically get to zigzag on them a lot if you move in and out of cover. The only time you really want to push straight down a lane is if no one is there. And I think that's what a lot of players struggle with, is that they'll push down the middle of the lane when someone is there. So you just end up getting shot and dying for free without really getting any shots off first.
Now, one thing that clicked with me all of a sudden is because, we talk a lot about on the show, the importance of being aggressive. And if you're playing trials or skirmish and you get a pick and you've got the other team outnumbered, it's go time. You got to push. This is pretty common sweat advice. And I had trouble matching that up with my practice, because I'd say, okay, it's go time. And I jump over the top of the box and I try and get to them as soon as I can to shoot them with my shotgun. And I never really had a destination in mind except to get to wherever they are. And plan never got much farther than that. So this idea that you have a destination when you're pushing, and you sort of have a specific idea of not only where you want to go, but the motion you're going to take to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so basically there's different paths you can take to push. I think a problem that a lot of players have when they hear push is that, like you said, you get into your head where you just got to get right to that orb to cover it. But the idea of a push isn't necessarily to sit on the orb, it's to control it. And so control implies that you apply pressure onto your opponents. So you can apply pressure from afar, all your guns are ranged. So all you really need to do is get to a point where if they move up to the orb, you can get shots off on them. That's a successful push. Obviously, based on your loadout, your push lethality is going to change based on what you're using. So if you want to push with a shotgun, you need to be in that 10-meter range where you can slide shotgun. If you want to push with a sniper, you can stay a lot further back and still be able to cover an orb. A common example of this is a res snipe. You can still apply pressure with the res snipe without necessarily pushing very far.
Okay, so I want to push into cover. What is cover and how do I push into it?
So cover it's basically any piece of map geometry that's going to protect you from gunfire. So if there's a box in front of you and you can't see through it and you can't see around it and you just move up to it, you're undercover. So that means from your perspective, you can't see the enemy, but from the enemy's perspective, they can't see you. And there's different varying levels of cover. There's complete cover, which would be you're behind a box and no one can see you. And there's partial cover, which would also be known as a head glitch. So if you push to, let's say, the little shelf on the back of Burning Shrine outside, if you play Trials, I'm sure everyone knows where that spot is. All you can see if you're the enemy is that player's head that's out on that shelf. But if you're the player on the shelf, you get full view of everyone else.
For me, it took a while. This seems so obvious, but it took a while to kind of trust that cover is cover. That even if in terms of just straight distance, you're relatively close to someone else, if you are fully behind cover, they can't shoot you. And that requires just a lot of map knowledge. You have to know at any given point on the map, what are the angles? Are there 3 different angles I'm exposed on? Are there 2? Could I really just cut it down to, I'm totally behind this box and there's only one angle from the distance I could be shot at. I remember watching you, Keen, just run around a map on your own, just a 30-minute rumble, just looking around. And I spent an entire 30-minute rumble on Burning Shrine just going, oh, if I stand here and I crouch, then there's only one approach. If I stand up, now there's two. So as long as I can keep track of where people are, I can kind of trust that the cover is going to work like cover, which is, at least for me, more of a leap of faith than I thought it would be. Such a simple thing. It blew my mind when I realized, okay, take Rusted Lands. If I spawn at the A spawn, I'm just going to book it towards the stairs or try and book it up to the whatever the little closet is or book it to the tank. And this idea that instead I can go get in cover and then find my next, say, okay, I want to go over here. What's my next piece of cover? And just kind of connect the dots from cover to cover and cover instead of just beelining. Blew my mind. Never done that before. And it's exhausting the first time you do it.
Yeah, it's very taxing because you don't have a lot of good map knowledge when you initially do it. And a lot of times that if you play a lot of Rumble, you tend to have your own way to move around the map called a rotation. And rotations initially start with you just sprinting through the traffic lanes, but as you start pushing through cover, they tend to take a lot longer, but you're a lot safer while you do them.
And this is another one of your magic phrases. You talk about creating negative space. Please explain.
Creating negative space is sort of it's the opposite of creating positive space. So the difference is negative space is constantly creating a gap between you and your opponent. That is to keep you from getting shotgunned. And positive space would be pushing. So pushing anyone is creating positive space where you're closing the gap between you and your opponent. And you're putting yourself in a position where your weapon's going to be effective. Negative space is you're pulling your opponent out of their cover and keeping that distance so you don't get immediately shotgunned. More specifically, creating negative space would be a Titan backskating or jumping straight up into the air over your opponent. Just backpedaling in general, moving around your target as opposed to straight at them. That's all going to create a gap of space between you and your opponent. And sometimes staying still is just as bad as moving towards someone because they can also be creating that positive space. So if they slide into you and you're standing still, it's not going to take much for them to get in that range to one-shot you.
I mean, the way you set it up, it kind of seems like... this is a gameplay decision that just revolves around the existence of shotguns, right? Either you're going to get shotgunned or you're going to shotgun someone or you're going to prevent someone from shotgunning you. I mean, is it really that simple as the magic, 8 meters or whatever that put you in real risk for a tight shotgun push?
I mean, that's pretty much it. If you stay, it's about 10 meters. So if you stay in the 10 to 12 meter range from your opponent and you can land your shots, then you're going to be safe from shotguns. You can tune your loadout based on where you're comfortable hitting your shots. That's really going to make you a better player is if you're always comfortable fighting wherever you're fighting and knowing where your limitations are. Unfortunately, if you aren't good at dealing with close quarters combat, you do have to play a lot more passively. But playing in and out of cover will really help you out there because you're not going to be exposed or expose yourself to situations where you're just too close. Over the time period that I have played, I tend to play a lot faster than I ever had before, and sniping just wasn't good for pushing or anything like that. But I don't want a shotgun because I just can't keep up in shotgun range. So I decided that I was going to use sidearms. And I finally got a Trespasser, and I did a lot of testing on it. So what I found out is that if you have below max armor, so I believe it's 8 armor or below, so you have 198 hit points, the Trespasser will actually 2-tap in its effective range. So it does 38 to the head, 28 to a body in a 3 burst. So it's basically a miniature pulse rifle that kills in the same time as a Year 1 Last Word. So if you have Unrepentant active... When you kill and reload the gun, you get a 6 burst. So if you hit 3 head, 3 body, you kill someone in a quarter second. The biggest issue that you're going to have with it is effective range is shotgun range. If you run quick draw on it, it does maximum damage at 9 meters. And if you run reinforced on it, it has damage drop off at 10 meters. So that's right within shotgun range. So what we just talked about pushing into cover and creating negative space, to use sidearms really well, it's paramount that you do that all the time. And you can basically never really push into a shotgunner. You can bait them by doing things like sliding into choke points and then immediately backpedaling or jumping back or skating backwards to pull them out of cover and sort of just spray them down. But you can never push into anyone because of how close you have to be in order to kill them. As far as my own personal results with it, I did 2 flawless cards with a pulse sidearm loadout. I tried a scout sidearm loadout for a while when I was learning, but I found that not having a strong medium range engagement space was really hurting my ability to be successful. So I switched it to a pulse rifle, managed to go flawless twice, and got plenty of clips where I would finish someone off with my trespasser, reload it, get a 1-tap, reload it, get a 2-tap, finish the round. And that was not uncommon. If I could get 1 kill with the gun, I basically felt invincible in the range that I wanted to be in.
So I wanna go back to something that you said, because like you said it very quickly, but I want everyone to pay attention to it. The aggressive play with a shotgun and aggressive play with a trespasser looks different. You're not trying to close the gap in the same way you are with the shotgun. You're getting up in someone's face, but you're trying to get them to come to you. And that aggressive in that case does not mean holding forward with your sprint down. It's backpedaling and jumping backwards. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe everyone thinks I'm just harping on this, but like that changed the way I looked at fusions, changed the way I looked at trespassers. And I don't know. I don't think it's 100% obvious.